Welcome back to Logical Magic, examining esoterica. Hey, today I have one of the funniest people that I've seen on the show. Her name is Jackie Kashian. She has been a stand-up comic for quite some time, but she also runs the Dork Forest, which is a fascinating podcast about people's fascinations, what they're into, what they geek out on. It is a veritable encyclopedia of things that you can look for to engage your interest in life. And as everybody knows, I work with trauma survivors, trying to help them heal. One of the hurdles for trauma survivors in recovery is finding a way to invest in life as a joyful journey rather than something that they're trying to get through. Hey, Jackie, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. I love how you described the Dork Forest. Fascinating, because I use the word dork a lot. So
I love the word dork. I'm a sci-fi geek.
yeah, and that's what people think the Dork Forest is. They think it's a lot of science fiction and video games, but it could be anything. Are you kidding me? It could be romance novels. It could be bees. It could be the Negro baseball league. It could
I
be.
heard one from Will Wheaton about whiskey.
Oh, that's right. And he stopped drinking, and now he wants to do bread.
All
And
right,
I'm like,
awesome.
please do. It's a lot like whiskey.
Fermenting something else.
Exactly.
What is the most interesting dorkdom or fascination that you've encountered?
Well, here's the thing about the Dork Forest is that it isn't necessarily about information.
Mhm.
Like the information can sometimes be incorrect. So, but it is about enthusiasm.
Exactly.
And so there's so many episodes. Like my Tumblr, every year I do a survey asking people what their favorite episodes were. And so there's a cheat sheet kind of list. Like if you wanted to start, right? It's also on the Facebook page. Who knows who's still on Facebook and who isn't? But the Tumblr page, because when I think about it, there's the one that just happened that really was amazing was this Korean dramedy
Mm.
episode with this guy named Tom Merritt, and he talked about like essentially what the plot points of Korean dramas are and dramedies, and they're bananas. You're just like, what is happening in this show? And then and it was so sometimes they're super funny and interesting, and it makes you want to go watch those shows. A lot of times they're music, like this week's episode is the Beatles. I don't know anything about the Beatles. I don't know anything about music.
Sounds like you're going too soon.
Well, except for that, this is probably the fourth episode I've done about the Beatles. It's like the thing is, they could be anything. Guy Branum talking about the Mitford sisters, which was a family of crazy aristocrats in the 30s and 40s. What from England was his stuff is always pretty much amazing. But it could be anything. It could literally the bees episode was great.
And one of the worth that we find in these darkdoms and these passions and these pursuits is that it is a healthy form of escapism. And realistically, at this point in time, after three of the toughest years that in history, recorded history, everybody has some form of trauma because their lives were pretty much snatched away from them and everything changed overnight, essentially, which can happen, but it was a mass event. So everybody incurred some, basically existential dilemmas around what they're doing in life. And healthy escapism is exactly what we're talking about. When you have an interest, when you have a passion or a pursuit, you have a refuge within this frightening world. And that is why it is so important to try and invest in something. I always tell people, go back to when you were like 9 years old. Do you remember what you were into? Did you like Barbie dolls? Did you like magic stories? There is a spark in your childhood that helped you get through something when you were going through something when you were younger. If you go back and start examining those, you have the seeds for what could then blossom into an adult interest, because all of the people on your podcast have been deeply invested in an interest in their lives, and it gives them an interest in their lives.
Right. And a lot of stuff is where you would be like, well, I think that this is a very solo activity and it might create isolation. But it actually, I mean, when you think about the best example, of course, is Comic-Con.
Mhm.
And Gen Con in Indianapolis is a board game version of that. And Gen Con is actually the best convention I think I've ever been to in my life, because it isn't passive. A lot of conventions, you go and see panels, you go and see people speak, you go and watch things. And Gen Con is literally find everyone wants to play a board game. Absolutely 60,000 people want to play a board
Oh,
game.
that's awesome.
And you can just join in. And, you know, if you don't like the people that you were playing that board game with, it turns out there's 59,000 other people.
Other people that you can then see
and it, right.
Yeah.
And it's a 4-day event. And I think it costs $35 for the weekend.
And it gives you a sense of community. You meet other people. Here's the thing
Huge.
about dorkdom or geekdom or fascination or however we want to term it, is that, hey, if when you were growing up, you were sitting at the outcast table in the lunchroom, please remember, those are all the best people, because they're like, hey, you can sit with us. And that is what dorkdom is like. It contains community. There are Dungeon and Dragon communities. It is a feeling of inclusion, which is what people are seeking in this world, to try and feel as if they are united and facing things together. And this is one of the ways to create and to find community.
Yeah, you know what Andy was my fellow, he's my husband. He says, like, we'll be he out in the world, he will see somebody, he goes, that looks like one of our people. And and or he'll meet somebody and it's like, oh yeah, I would like to play games with her, because he's a big video game dork, because he's a game designer. So
okay. Yeah, I have a really good friend totally into Dragon Age, and like that really helped her through a time of difficult recovery from a medical incident.
Yeah.
So it really gives you an anchoring point. Now, have you ever encountered somebody on the show where you like just kind of it's like, wow, that is so far out there. How did you even get into it?
Oh, weird. Sort of like a there was a woman, actually, now that you mentioned it, who said that she loved pirates.
Okay.
And what she did, the pirate episode was one of the greatest episodes. I cannot remember her name. She was super nice. And but she saw, first of all, the way the story comes out is often hilarious to me, because I'm like, all right, you like pirates. Because I always think about it. There's a science fiction series written by this woman, Cage Baker, and they go back in time and they meet pirates, and they're horrible, murderous.
As they were.
Yes. And so
we
whatever
size them, but they're scary.
Right. They are completely, they're thieves and murderers. So and she was like, she got into pirates because of that Johnny Depp
okay. Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah.
The Pirates of the Caribbean. So she literally obsessed about it, volunteered to learn how to she worked on a ship, a sailing ship off the coast of Long Beach here in Los Angeles, and then moved to England and got her master's or her PhD in the history of pirates.
Oh, wow.
And it all started because of the Johnny Depp.
Because she's like, he looks good. I like the way he's walking. It's funny. It sparked an interest in her and then gave her a purpose in life. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And not everybody's interest has to branch out into their career or what they're pursuing.
Nobody's interest. I swear when she told me that she ended up moving to England and getting her advanced degree in this, I was like, I think I'm in love with you. What just happened?
She's all in. I thought like maybe she dated a pirate's parrot or something. You know, like, how did you get into that? Oh, Johnny Depp. And it makes perfect sense, because as soon as you said that, the things that I were envisioning, I'm like, was she abducted on the high seas? What happened to her? They were gourmet cooks. She really got along with them. But no, Johnny Depp, that makes perfect sense.
That's so funny that
that is expanding it into a very practical area as well, which can happen. Now, you happen to do something that is a passion for many people, and it has turned into your profession as well. Jackie, how long have you been doing stand-up?
Well, I count the 80s as 1 year, so
Oh,
it's
of course.
probably I guess it would be, I'd say 34, but it's I started in 1984. So um the weird thing about the Dork Forest is that it's hard for me to do Dork Forest about stand up. I have
Oh,
another podcast called the Jackie and Laurie Show where all we do is talk about stand up.
mhm.
And that because it was never something I was into, the Dork Forest.
Okay.
So or the stand-up comedy. When I was a kid, we never listened to stand-up. And so um it ended up like when I saw stand-up comedy, it was a fluke. So I ended up getting into it, but it was very much not something I was interested in. I just watched stand-up comedy, was one of the drunken jackasses that talked to the comic. It was heckling. Was it heckling? Kind of. I think it was heckling. And then I wouldn't shut up. So they told me that open mic was in on Sundays, and I started doing stand-up from that. And it was like what I picture falling into a vat of heroin would be like, because I literally
Oh.
was on board from the beginning.
You
So
got the bug, but bad, and it sounds like it started out because you were misbehaving in the audience, which I fully support. That's a good thing.
well, sometimes it happens. It's an indictment against my own, against my own
Your
yeah.
craft is amazing though, because I catch you on TikTok all the time, and even in like little 60-second blurbs, you have me rolling. And I
Oh,
know
that's great.
it causes like, your entire life has to be structured around being on the road. And what is your personal dorkdom that you take with you that helps give you an anchoring point at when you're on the road?
Well, I tend to read, and like that's what people always ask me. It's like, what's your dorkdom? But I have a lot of passions, and I have a lot of you know, the real thing with hearing what somebody else really likes is just a willingness. You have to be willing to hear what they're interested in and not just go, well, I don't like that.
Or not to exclude it because it seems weird to you. And when you find
Right.
somebody who is really deeply interested in something, you see an animating spark in them that is not present in other areas of life. It really is, when you talk to people about what they're interested in, what you're really looking into is what they find valuable in life, what lights them up, what is their animating force and keeps them going forward. Because the greatest thing about the whole idea of a dorkdom is it's centered in delight, which
Yes.
can be one of the hardest things to come by in this sometimes difficult world, almost always difficult. If you can
Right.
create your own universe where there is something that is structured, has input, and then also has delight in it, you have a refuge, you have a place of safety to go to. And I'm always noticing that you got me through a very interesting year when I was in Missouri. I was in Missouri for 4 years. It was like a hostage situation, but I did.
Yes.
And I had to remodel a house. And I was in there all by myself. My now ex-husband had come to California, and I was there for 6 months. And while I was doing stuff like painting every ceiling, every wall, the exterior, I was listening to podcasts the whole time. So now you know where you come into my
Okay.
story. And this is a very interesting thing because Karen Runtowski, who was just on my podcast, is the person who introduced me and gave me the introduction to you. I know Karen because of you.
Right. And I know you
On your
because
show.
of Karen.
Exactly. It's this
Right.
weird cyclical thing. She had talked about ayahuasca on your
Yep.
show, and I emailed you going, "What's that?" Now, I don't happen to personally use hallucinogenics in a spiritual practice, but many people do, and that's what it is. And that's what she was talking about on your show. And I know
Did
you
she
have
do
good
the
stuff.
Iowa? I thought she did. She's been on like 4 or 5 times. She did
Mhm.
Mothman. That was quite fun.
Oh, that's like
And
always interesting to talk to. She refers people to me for demonic entity removal. So we have some really interesting and out there conversations as well. But she's always this person who she has a tremendous verve and interest and driving force in life. And whatever she aims her interested at, you can see it expanding. She's one of those
right.
people who gets excited about things. That's the coolest thing about talking to people about their interests. Now,
Yeah.
collectors, do you have a lot of collectors that come on the Dork Forest?
Yeah. I'm surrounded by a collection of, my husband collects very specific Hot Wheels.
Mhm.
And quite honestly, I think that they're pretty great too. He's
Reaching for a prop. Yay.
reaching for a toy. Um, there's the Hot Wheel that he collects is called character cars, and
Ah.
they are essentially and they're themed. They're like Star Wars and Marvel and DC and Looney Tunes and whatever. One of my favorite ones, because I only own 5. He
Mhm.
owns probably hundreds. But the deal is this: like this one is Bugs Bunny.
Oh,
This is a
okay.
Bugs Bunny.
Oh my God,
Uh,
it's got cute little buck teeth on the grill. That's adorable. And
right,
it's
because
got a tail.
this is not the car that Bugs Bunny would drive if Bugs Bunny drove a car. This is the car that Bugs Bunny would be if Bugs
It-
Bunny
like,
were a car. So he's
exactly.
got the grill is buck teeth and he's got a pink nose. And then there's carrots on the running boards. And there's a cottontail. That's a spoiler kind of thing. Very adorable. And then his ears are in the top. And then there's like I also thought that this one was pretty cool, which is the Mandalorian,
Oh yeah.
and it's just his helmet, and it looks really cool.
It's
And
like Pixar got a hold of these very particular things, Bugs Bunny and this inanimate object, and they're like, what would you be if you were a car? You'd be this.
right,
Perfect.
and you know that like the people who design them, the amount of work and attention that they put into it is kind of amazing. It's really really delightful.
Now, do you and
So
your
yeah,
husband share any interests?
we share a lot of interests because he's he's open to hearing about things, and I've always been sort of I like video games. He makes video games. We only like right now we're mostly just playing one video game. And even though he did get me, I had a Pokemon episode and I was like, I want to play Pokemon. And I have a Switch, but I haven't put it in the Switch yet because I know that productivity will go just down, down, down,
Oh,
down.
exactly. Whenever you engage with a video game, it is like it's a time field that sucks time into it. You emerge and it's 3 days later, and it's like, I swear I thought it was in there for 47 minutes. What the hell?
Right.
It genuinely is. It messes with the time
Right.
continuum on it.
So what I've done is like what you were talking about was sort of like what I think of it as with dorkdoms is like a really great way to sort of stop the voices, right?
Oh, okay.
Like because there's a
Exactly.
committee meeting that's going on in all of our brain boxes that are telling us that we're a hunk of junk, but we're also the most important person in the world.
Mhm.
And so the way that I do that, and it doesn't take me from my responsibilities, right? I mean, there's a it's not even a fine line. It's a giant brick wall. It's the wall of China in between, just sort of barricading yourself in your room and reading Harlequin romances until you fall over in a heap.
Mhm.
Uh, but I used to read Harlequin romances, like in junior high, and now I still read romance novels, but I like the historical ones with a little more sexy times.
You know what? I like some historical romances too. Many, many years ago, I was in a car accident that landed me in a wheelchair just from broken bones, not paralyzed, while it was healing. And I swear there, I think her name was Julia Garwood or Julie Garwood.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I've read Julie Garwood.
like a friend of mine gave me multiples of her books, and it was funny on top of everything else. And what you need more than anything when you're in recovery from anything is a good effing laugh, because nothing
Right,
makes you more joyful and happy to be alive than the act of laughing. That's why the whole interest thing is important as well.
right, and happy ending.
Oh, yes,
You know,
exactly. And
because the
strong
thing.
women. There are a
Oh my
lot of
God,
strong women in the romance genre.
one
People
of
don't
my
think of it that way.
I read this nonfiction book about this woman who wrote romance novels
Mhm.
and probably still does. I really enjoyed the. It was sort of it was. I think it's called like bosoms and something. It makes fun of itself, right? Because here's the thing: there was always been a great deal of shame in reading romance novels, much like there were in the '60s and '70s about reading science fiction, and then it became literature, right?
Mhm.
And romance novels, everyone just goes to Jane Austen, and I love Jane Austen, and I loved Georgette Heyer, who essentially essentially, pardon me, in the 20s, loved Jane Austen. And Georgette Heyer was pretty much the creator of the historical romance novel.
Mhm.
And hers are super funny and they aren't sexy at all. There might be, there's some longing looks and not Wuthering Heights longing looks. I don't like a
Oh,
sad sack.
oh
I,
Lord, Wuthering Heights, I wanted both of those people to fall off a cliff if that's love.
You're right, exactly. That feels like a terrible example of what love is. And but I will say this is in that nonfiction, she talked about how when she went to Vassar or some fucking thing, pardon my language.
Boris.
Okay. She went to some fancy school. She came home from college and her mom said, have you decided what you kind of want to concentrate on at university? And she goes, yeah, I think I'm going to do women's literature. And her mom said, oh, so romance novels? Are you going to read romance novels? She was like, you mean those Fabio books? Not a chance. And her mom goes, oh, you mean the literature that was written by women, for women, about women?
Yes.
And she she was like, fine, give me a syllabus. And her mom wrote her a syllabus of books to start with. And one of the interesting things about the history of romance novels for me is that the reason they are sold in grocery stores is because women could hide the purchase of the books in their grocery budget.
Mm-hmm.
And because otherwise you had to appeal or apply to your husband and he would know that you were buying
Exactly.
books.
Exactly. It was
And
a way of subverting a patriarchal control within a household to have women be able to have their escapism and to embrace their sexuality, which we have been taught in a puritanical society because we hail from the Puritans here in the States, that sex is bad. We're not ashamed of like having an appetite for food, but God forbid you like sex as a woman and then it's all like everybody gets freaky deaky.
then you're a whore. Yes.
Exactly. Then you're practically walking the streets if you embrace your sexuality. But I like the whole entire genre. I don't read a lot of it any longer because like I don't have the time. But I like
it goes in spurts, quite honestly. Like it just
that makes
depends what I need to, what I'm trying to escape essentially. And when you think about sort of women's lives, it's interesting because both men and women, very binary, are raised with such just crummy attitudes where you're just like, and it's why boys, either rebel or they double down on this thing. And, my husband was raised by lesbians and is very much in touch with, and he liked all that nerd stuff when he was a kid. So, he got pushed around but he was also encouraged to like whatever the hell he wanted. But just when you look at how when we're little girls, we're encouraged to just go get your dad some coffee, make sure you're of use to the other women in the kitchen. The other women are in the kitchen. The other women are essentially creating tiny universes that they can control. And men are told that they have to go out and have adventures. And if heaven forfend, they don't want to.
Exactly.
If you don't want, if you're not adventurous.
The way we approach our idea of what a man and a woman is a societal construct where we are taught that women do this and are meant to do this and are biologically programmed to do that. And men are told you're never supposed, like they literally beat the feelings out of men. Then we wonder why they have so many emotional issues. You're not allowed to show any emotions, but you're supposed to be a tender partner. Figure that one out. That's part of the reason I'm genuinely in favor of like kind of putting gender aside, because the way we react to the idea of gender is a societal construct.
Right.
We confuse biological function with defining what a gender is or what a person who identifies as a particular gender is. And here's the reality of it is that everybody really is individual. And if you were taken into a different set of circumstances as your husband was and raised in a different way, you get a different result and one that allows him to embrace the idea of being a nonconformist. The easiest way to be happy is to make sure that you understand you don't need to be like anybody other than yourself. It is a good idea to find an interest, to find a pursuit, to find a passion. But if you're trying to fit a mold that was designed by a power structure trying to control you, you're set up for sadness and failure. So break that mold, get out of it, and find your interest, you know?
Right. That's great. I mean, it makes me think that, you can find friends everywhere.
Mhm.
That bit about, me not having friends. I mean, there's that I have, it's interesting the stuff that I write about for stand up, and it's because and how much it resonates with people and how much it doesn't resonate with other people, quite honestly. But I was taught about friendship in, a series of different, like, I read a book and I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anything to do. And my sister made me do things. She was like, well, you're going to be in student council. Am I?
I hate to break it to you.
I have, she's like, I'm student council president and you are going to be put to work. And so
And your
she made
legacy.
and you're like, and she's like, now you're gonna either be student council and I was like, I don't want to be in student council. And she's like, what do you want to do? And she made me look at all the things. And I was like, well, I want to go out for basketball and I want to work for the school newspaper. And she's like, those are both valid. I was like, I want to quit my instrument. And she was like, you can't quit your instrument. You got to wait till high school because Miss Howie's amazing and she's going to save your life. And that woman, that teacher, my high school band director, literally saved lives. She genuinely did, because she volunteered in the summer to create a marching band. She did not get paid for. And we practiced 3 or 4 times a week. And then she got us gigs marching in parades. And so she made the parade people pay for the school bus. And she probably got a stipend, but she probably made, $1,000 in the 3 months of, and
it was a passion pursuit for her, obviously.
Obviously. And so when she retired, they could not find another, band director who was willing to do that. So what they had to do, and I don't know that they've done it actually, is find money to pay someone to do it.
Well,
So
they do say that, if you want to see the societal health of any particular society, look at their relationship to the arts. And ours is really struggling. And like you, I had multiple teachers throughout my high school years. And I had, anybody who's been listening to me for a while knows I have this ridiculously traumatic backstory, but I'm okay now. And one of the reasons that I'm okay is that I had so many of these interests that I could reach for when, spoiler alert, I've always been a little weird. And, and so I would go towards things that were accepting, and the art rooms and the band rooms of any learning institution are where you will find acceptance of difference, because it's a creative space. And that's what we're talking about as well. When we're trying to look for interest in life, go towards a creative space or admiring somebody else's creation. And immediately you're interacting with, again, that animating spark, that force that makes you look forward to something, which is what dorkdoms and passions and comedy and band all do.
Talk to me about your love of beach glass. Let's do this.
Exactly.
Whatever it is.
I think that this gets a little bit woo-woo, but I don't think people are any more beautiful than when they are talking about the things that they truly love. It can absolutely transfigure somebody. You can see somebody in a bad day and start asking them about their interests, and you can see their energy change because they've redirected in another direction that is positive for them. And that's another thing for trauma survivors. I'm a broken record about it because we're all trying to help each other heal. Is if you are in a bad space, there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy where you choose an emotional direction. And that's one of the things that having an interest can fill, is when you are in that whole fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to go through a routine until you are experiencing interest and joy in life again, and going through the motions can prime that pump and make you interested. Just like catching somebody on a bad day, talking to them about their interests, you will see them light up in a way that they had not been before.
Yeah. So I start every day with a prayer. And I have a God of my understanding. This is not to impinge on anybody else's pantheon. Live it up, folks. But and I do use the word God, which is somewhat triggering for some people because
they relate it to religion, and don't think of religion, think of the divine power.
Yeah, just think of anything that isn't you, but it's probably inside of you as well as outside of you. Exactly. And but I wake up and I'm like, thank God I'm alive. And thank God I'm willing to accept help. And thank God I'm able to give help. Right. It's a variation on that, obviously, as I stutter over the words. And but the thing is that first one, thank God I'm alive. I don't always believe that.
No, sometimes you have to, like, maybe it'll be better tomorrow. You have to remember that things will pass.
I
Yeah.
know it'll be different tomorrow. I cannot, and I say, because I do a joke now about suicide, and whenever you do a joke about suicide, you have to mention the suicide hotline.
Yes.
And so I joke and I say, I don't know it. Good luck. But I do say, here's the pep talk. Whenever I want to kill myself, the pep talk I give myself is literally, I cannot promise that tomorrow will be better, but I can promise, and I do, that it's going to be different. And you don't want to miss it.
This is very, very true. And trauma survivors really, and like, I've been listening to you for a while. So I actually do know a little bit about your childhood and a couple of other things. Like not being creepy, it just I happen to know about your backstory.
Do you know what's creepy? My Wikipedia page.
Oh, I'm
People
sure.
have been listening to 17 years of the Dork Forest. They've got the names of all of my siblings, my stepmother. It's
your cats, her pin is, I'm 100% sure a deep dive on you and have cataloged it somewhere. You probably have a website dedicated to you that you're like, I don't look there because it freaks me out just a little bit, but you go off the jam. But that is something that we need to talk about, is that people who were raised in difficult situations, who never felt included, really do struggle with the concept of life is this beautiful journey. Sometimes it's this terrible task to try and get through, and they will suffer from the desire to not be alive any longer. And it's not quite the same thing as being suicidal, but it is finding that there is an absence of an interest in life, which can lead to major depressive disorder or clinical depression. And again, that's why I'm always like, get an interest. It'll help you.
See, the bit, and now you're going to hear it, is that my dad, I was in my early 30s and I told him that I was super depressed. And he goes, yeah, sometimes in your 20s and 30s, you want to kill yourself. And I said, what's happening? How is that helpful? And he goes, well, here's the good news. In your 30s and 40s, in your 20s and 30s, you want to kill yourself. In your 40s and 50s, you don't want to kill yourself anymore. Sometimes you just want to die. But here's the good news, is that if you can make it to 60, you're kind of home free. Because once you're 60, you're like, I need like 15 more years. Once you're 70, you're like, I need like 7 or 8 more years. My dad's 85, and at no point, and consistently he has said over the last 5 years, he said, I would never buy a green banana. But if I get a green banana and I get to live long enough to eat that banana, it's a good day. It's a real good day.
That I love your dad's perspective, and I also like the whole, like, if you can cross the event Rubicon of turning 50, it all starts to shift where you're like, I don't want to die. No, I don't want to die.
He said the other day, he said to me, because some woman, he lives in an old people apartment building, right? And he said one of the women is turning 100, and he said, you know what I realized this morning? Nobody wants to be 100 until they're 99.
Exactly.
And I was like, you were. And I would say this about the trauma of childhood, is that two things. One, my friend Ophira Eisenberg, I don't know if you have ever, she used to have a show on NPR. She's a New York comic. She's very funny. She's from Canada. And but she has the greatest premise about how everybody says how resilient children are. Children are so resilient. She's like, if they're so resilient, how come everyone I know spends their entire adulthood trying to process what happened to them when they were children? And such a great premise. And the other,
so true. Recovering from the carefree days of childhood fills up the first decade of your adult life.
Right. And the other thing is I know people who have had beautiful childhoods, who have trauma. Who are literally a mess. And they're like, I don't know why it happened. My parents are perfectly nice people. They genuinely did their best, and their best was good. Like, because you meet people whose parents who did their best, and their best wasn't very good. And you're like, they did do their best. Your best just happened to be not great.
And a really limited toolkit to do their best with. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, I have met in the last couple of years 3 women. Were they all women? I don't know. 27. That was the common denomination. They were about 27 years old, and they were all told me that they were going through trauma therapy. And at first, I was very judgmental, because I was like, what the hell happened to you? You have dental. Look at you. And they're 27. And it occurred to me that what was invented about 31 years ago was the 24-hour news cycle.
Yep.
And I'm like, no wonder they're traumatized. The fact that they have to listen to every weird, horrible thing that's happened. Because, I can't fix anything that's happening in Syria or the Ukraine. I can throw them $100, but my favorite way to get the news, I swear to God, is Pioneer Days. 2 weeks late with a lot of analysis.
Yeah, exactly. So don't tell me something is imminently happening. Tell me we got through it.
Right. There 44,000 people died in Turkey. That is super sad. But 100 million people still lived, and here's $100. Right? Please throw that towards, rebuilding their water system or whatever.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that I reached out to you, because it doesn't I actually end up talking to a lot of stand-up comics.
There you go.
I like their vibe. I like your vibe. One of the things that stirred me to reach out to you to do this podcast was you had done a blurb on TikTok in which you were talking about hey, just help people. If you want to see the world get better, just be kinder in it, and you're immediately making the world better because your perception of it will in fact be better. And when we talk about trauma and how it has increased over the last couple of decades with that constant stimulation, a bombardment of constant input, and it overwhelms our ability to have downtime. We can't, when we're trying to be peaceful, which used to be the refuge of people, they would go and fish and read and pray and, stand in fields or whatever the hell they did before television, I know. They at least had this time to decompress and to kind of let the crap of life slough off of them. We don't have that space any longer if we're interacting with a media-centered world, so we have to create it ourselves through our interests.
Yeah. It's just going outside at all. I mean, we got a dog about 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
And walking this dog is just, who knew I needed to talk to myself for 15 minutes every day as I walk around. Ostensibly I'm talking to the dog. Ostensibly I'm walking the dog. But really I'm just talking to myself for 15 minutes. And it gets you think differently when you're moving. You literally get a different perspective. Yep. Because you're looking at something else. It's not rocket science. It's what I always think about. You will know the book of Louise Hay's, You Can Heal Your Life. And she has all these affirmations. And one of the ones that I made fun of initially was is if you're in a coma, your affirmation is supposed to be, I can face life. And the thing is, you're just I was talking to somebody, it could have been Rontowski, because Karen Rontowski is in many ways a fucking genius.
Yes,
she's, first of all, an amazing stand-up comic. If you get a chance to watch her dry bar, you get a chance to watch her reels or her TikTok, do it. She's also incredibly empathetic, right? She has a really good sense of what is bugging people, right?
She is the most thoroughly decent human being that I've encountered in a long time.
She's super decent. It is a genuine delight to be considered her friend. And what was the point of this? Oh, I know. I think she was telling me that it was the people. Oh, she told me about Louise. I think she was the one who told me that it was the people who were sitting around the coma person. That was the affirmation that you were supposed to use.
It wasn't. So. Well, I teach a little bit of both, which is don't try and deny your reality to the extent that you're in, actual denial of the issues that you're trying to face. But whenever you can, speak to yourself encouragingly, because most, again, hey, trauma survivors, if somebody
pep talk.
I said trauma survivors, they'd be rich by the end of the week, because it comes out of my mouth constantly. And that is because so many people really are walking around with trauma. And one of the things that trauma survivors need to do, if they did have the parents who might have been trying their best or might not have been trying their best, is to rewrite their inner dialogue. And when you talk about talking to yourself while you're walking the dogs, That is literally something I tell clients to do, is get out voice memo and start recording yourself talking about your life and what you would like to have happen, and speaking to yourself encouragingly, like you're either a little kid that you're watching who needs to be encouraged through a difficult task, or as if you are talking to your very best friend. And it will reshape your life if you start encouraging yourself through your difficult periods, as if you are encouraging another part of yourself through how to get through something.
Yeah, and if you can be aware of that committee meeting, that negative talk. I think Louise Hayes, actually, my friend Jennifer gave me the book, and she was like, one of the things is you're supposed to say what one of the tasks, right? Maria Bamford loves a workbook, and this was a sort of a workbooky thing to do, which was 400 times a day say, I love and approve of myself. 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 I love and approve of myself.
Yeah,
If you
sometimes
say it,
it's 27. I got lost, you know.
right. Well, that's why I do them in 5s or 10s, and you're supposed to do it. And according to the book, it was whenever you have a negative thought about yourself, say that 5 times. As I was saying it to you, I felt myself relax a little bit, because I did do it, and you're supposed to do it for 30 days. And I did do it for 30 days. And it literally, it unlocked like a part of my brain that was just willing to just breathe a little bit better. And the hard part of not deciding, but discovering that everyone has this trauma, whether they had, the most loving parents or the most abusive parents, or whoever the adults were in their lives. But is that the word trauma is much like empathy is used as a stick right now, a bit of it, where it's where it feels overused, where you're just like, if someone, where someone says, well, I have trauma, and you're like, by definition, you do have trauma. Because that's the definition of the word. Something traumatic happened, you have to process it.
Yeah.
But it's not to belittle the things that happen physically, or the things that happen sexually, or the things that didn't happen physically or sexually, but because everybody's sad sack thing that happened to them when they were a kid, you're gonna have to process it.
You will.
My stepmother said to me, I'm probably 10 years old, which means that she was probably 30, 35. And
oh, wow.
She said, what I don't know, I can't exactly remember how she put it, but it was something along the lines of, if you were born in the rain, that's sad. But if you're 30 years old and you're still standing in the rain, get the fuck out of the rain.
Yeah.
You're an adult. You have to learn how to process this stuff. You know that umbrellas exist. You know that you can get away from the rain. And she was like, it's so, because her childhood was full of just nonsense, just like abandonment, and her mom wanted a career, and her dad was like, well, I have my career. And so her mom was,
both of us.
Yeah, but they had 5 kids, and so her dad died, and then her mom moved. She got a job being a secretary for a U.S. senator from Cudahy, Wisconsin. And she was like, I'm going to go to Washington. If you could finish raising your 2 younger siblings, that'd be great. And she did. She had to do that. And it wasn't awesome.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. Like an underdeveloped emotional state. Here, take care of them and guide them into adulthood. Good luck. I'll be outie. Yeah.
You're 17, almost 18. They're 14 and 15, or 13 and 15. And so she went to beauty school, and she, helped, raise the kids, and she didn't have a driver's license until she married my dad, which was weird. But my dad was like, yeah, you're going to need a driver's license because I'm not driving you over. which is, by the way, how the legalization of women driving in Saudi Arabia happened.
Was people
Like,
like getting sick of driving women to the market? Like, we
yeah,
can't afford a driver, so get a driver's license.
right, because they sent all the, like, generations of young men and women were sent to other countries where women were allowed to drive. And so when their brothers came home and the sisters came home and they were like, I would like to drive, and their brothers were like, well, I don't want to have to drive you everywhere. What is the problem? Just let her drive.
Women's
And
rights came alive for laziness. Yeah, like, I don't want to drive her, let her drive. Okay, rights
I think it's yeah, yeah.
unlocked. Well, you made a good point when you're talking about, like, hey, if you're born in the rain, but 30 years later you're still standing in the rain, accept responsibility for the fact that you are wet. Because sooner or later, you honest to goodness have to, like, here's the thing, life is a difficult journey, and it's never a contest. So whether or not somebody has deep, deep trauma, or somebody has something that to somebody who has deep, deep trauma looks like, did that upset you? It's the thing that happened to them. So yeah, it upset them. It caused their own formative damage, their own inner wounds that everybody has and everybody has to heal. And sooner or later, you get to a point where it's like, this is the stuff that was done to me. Now, what am I going to do with it?
Right.
And
Right.
you genuinely have to choose which direction you're going to take it in. And I promise you, life will get better and better and better if you choose the direction of, I am going to overcome that. I'm going to understand what it did to me. I'm going to claim who I was meant to be to begin with, and I'm going to enjoy this life, if nothing else, to spite the past, but also because I deserve to enjoy this life. And it is a choice that we can make. And again, one of the key things in it, broken record trauma girl over here, is find an interest, and you will be paving, you'll put the first paving stone in the road to a feeling of recovery, joy, acceptance, and interest, which these are all the things that defeat depression.
Right. There is hello, doggo. So this dog would like to be pet very briefly. I would
We
like
have a
to
dog over there. We have a dog over there. You have a dog. Apparently, like, probably outside of my townhome, there has a canine assembly going. There's dog stuff going on in there now. We can tell.
yay. It's
Out.
yeah, it's I have to say I kind of want to look it up here just real quickly. Stop. Get away from me. Okay, there we go. It's I don't understand how I'm signed out of something. Anyway, so the fan favorites for the Dork Forest, because that's really what you're asking about. So I've had three of my siblings on to talk about things that they love, that they're dorkdoms, and my sister really liked. She likes cooking a great deal. Like, she studied to be a not a chef, but a good cook. Anyway, and she loves orchestras, right? So my brother Phil was on talking about fly fishing. Um, the interesting thing is where somebody picks like a character. Like, Caitlin Durante did an episode entirely about Paddington Bear.
Oh my God, how wonderful.
Right? Irene too did In-N-Out Burger. And Shelley McClendon, who's a Portland, Oregon, she owns a theater in Portland, Oregon. She did the documentaries about cults.
Oh,
That's
wow.
her favorite thing. Learning to draw, Kyle. The Chicago dive bars. That made me uncomfortable and worried for him.
And when visiting Chicago anytime soon, not great for the commerce, but
Right. My friend Carmen Morales did collaging. This woman from out of nowhere, where she was like, you know what I love? Spreadsheets. I love the order of them. I love to do them. I love that. Yeah, it's
Oh, that's like a dream come true for somebody who has OCD. You put it into a manageable, template, and it's like the thing that was driving you crazy before becomes the thing that is fueling your jam. That's awesome.
right. So, like, Noor Hadidi, who's a comic from Toronto, did Pokemon. This other guy did professional gamblers and the history of professional gambling.
Wow.
Surfing, trombone. It could be Chuck E. Cheese. The history of Chuck E. Cheese was actually amazing. Joel Johnson did Gone with the Wind, which was hilarious. Sandman LARPs.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is honest to goodness. Please, please, please listen. If you have not checked out the Dork Forest with Jackie Kashian, please do. Even if you're just scrolling through the episode descriptions, you're going to get ideas, because it is difficult sometimes to pull yourself out of the pit of despair and be like, I'm going to walk in this land, I'm going to find interest in it. But it starts with one single step. So, hey, how about the step that you take is pulling up the Dork Forest, going through the episode lists, and seeing all the diverse interests that people have found in this world. And yours might not match theirs, but it might spark an idea of what your interests could be. And never judge yourself. Never judge yourself.
And you can Google like whatever your favorite dorkdom is.
Yep.
Like something that you do like, and the words the Dork Forest. And there might be an episode about that, or something you're vaguely interested in, or a stand-up comic that you really like, and the words the Dork Forest. They might be on the Dork Forest talking about it. Maria's done at least 6 episodes, and she loves fiscal transparency. That's one of the things she loves. Self-help books, she loves that. She loves, she interviewed me about romance novels and chicken, because I love chicken. I love chicken recipes.
Do you like to read romance novels while eating chicken?
I like to do almost anything while eating chicken. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyway.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much for joining me, because honest to goodness, this is the area that people struggle the most with. And your podcast is a wealth of information on that. And people just being excited and interested, which even engaging with that energy makes you feel better anyway. And Jackie, where can people find you?
Well, you can go to JackieKashian.com and you can see my tour dates. You can see the 2 podcasts. You can see clips of me doing stand-up. But JackieKashian.com might be hard to spell. So you can go to FamilyPetAncestry.com, which is I bought because it made me laugh. I like the idea of someone thinking to themselves, did my cat come over in the Mayflower? Is my dog eligible to join the Dogs of the American Revolution? JackieKashian.com, FamilyPetAncestry.com, and it's at Jackie Kashian.
Guide dogs, yeah.
Right. And it's at Jackie Kashian everywhere. So
and you're on TikTok as well. Is that also Jackie Kashian?
TikTok, yep.
Twitter. Goodness, we didn't give you much of a chance to show off your skills here, but you are one of the funniest people. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying that it's at Jackie Kashian, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. The only thing that's different, I think, is YouTube, where the podcast is also videos of the podcast, and it might be under the Dork Forest. I can't remember. I have to figure it out.
Well, honest to goodness, if you tune into Jackie on any of those platforms, within 5 minutes, you're going to be rolling. You made a joke about your husband's iguana and how it's like petting a purse. And I was like, literally, like, I can't do anything right now. I'm busy laughing. And that is exactly the vibe that you have with your comedy. And I thank you so much for sharing your time and sharing your interests here. Everybody, if you're looking for me, I'm at therisingmoon.com. If you want to book me for a tarot reading, a life coaching session, a magic lesson, I do a lot of stuff. You can find me there. You can find me on YouTube at Cronecast at the Rising Moon, not Chromecast with an M, Cronecast with an N like Nancy. Take care, be well, live with interest, and live magically.